Assassin's Creed Rogue is a game that I think fell flat from its expectations. Like many Ubisoft games, both within Assassin's Creed and outside of it, it had so much potential that the company didn't quite deliver on. The premise of an assassin turned rogue, that's where the name comes from, is so enthralling because I think that the Kenway saga very successfully analyzes the hypocrisies and tyrannies of the Assassin's Creed, and the only natural conclusion to that saga after Assassin's Creed 3 and Assassin's Creed 4 is to explore the idea of an assassin realizing these tyrannies and hypocrisies and rebelling against the Brotherhood, joining the Templars believing that they have the more morally righteous stance. And this is exactly what happens in Assassin's Creed Rogue, but the context surrounding it was not taken advantage of at all. Shay basically just becomes an assassin with a different name, and the assassins in this game basically start acting like Templars. They start having headquarters with flags and gang members like they were assassins from before the Levantine Brotherhood, and the Templars start acting more righteous and start promoting a lot of freedom, even though they claim that they believe in order. So a lot of the circumstances surrounding the story of Assassin's Creed Rogue doesn't really seem to make all that much sense. A lot of people also complained that it was kind of just copy-pasted from Black Flag, and I don't personally agree with that. I think that a side game is going to reuse a lot of assets, and I have never had any problems with side games reusing assets. This is something that Mirage did as well with Valhalla, and I love Mirage. It's one of my favorite games in the franchise. So I have no problem with the reuse of assets in Assassin's Creed Rogue, and I have no problem with the idea of this being a smaller, shorter side game. I don't mind that the story is short like a lot of people do, and I don't mind that it's a game that clearly is very much a smaller game made by a side studio to co-launch with Unity. The one thing that I do agree with is not that good is the missed opportunity they had to really explore the perspective of a Templar, to play an entire game from the perspective of a Templar as a Templar. I think that it was very lazily done. I think that they just switched roles without really delving into how a Templar and an assassin are different, and it was a huge missed opportunity. But there is one thing that I think Assassin's Creed Rogue did beautifully that I wish more people spoke about in depth, because they kind of mentioned it as a very cool thing that happened, but I don't think that people realize how important things like this are and how much I miss it because Ubisoft doesn't really do it anymore. What I'm talking about, and this is a spoiler alert if you haven't played Rogue and you want to play it, is that Assassin's Creed Rogue is deeply linked with Assassin's Creed Unity. At the end of AC Rogue, you kill Arno's father, essentially starting Arno's journey to become an assassin. And at the beginning of AC Unity, you see your father dead on the floor, not knowing who killed him. And it turns out that it's Shay when you play Assassin's Creed Rogue. And this is a story that's slowly peppered in throughout Assassin's Creed Rogue with short sequences later in Shay's life in Paris. Ubisoft made it very clear that they didn't really want to make sequels for protagonists in Assassin's Creed because it's very difficult to onboard new audiences and grow an audience when they feel like they have to catch up on the previous game to play the new game. The reason why Ezio really is the only person to have had a sequel, and the closest thing we have after that is Basim being in Mirage after being in Valhalla. Now, I completely understand this from a business perspective, even though I disagree, and I think that there's a lot of merit to having a protagonist people can invest themselves into, like Kratos or Nathan Drake. I also understand the perspective of wanting to have a new historical period as a new marketing pitch and having a new protagonist so that everyone can jump into the new Assassin's Creed game without having to have played the other ones. I think this is not very sustainable because it means that fan investment can only go so far when you cannot get invested into protagonists and kind of dive into it without having to play another game that is geared towards beginners and people who have never seen the franchise, because you always want to go deeper than the other game. You always want to explore more themes, go deeper in the story, do more complex things, and that's kind of capped if every time you have to start in a new historical time period and with a new protagonist. What I like about Ubisoft Sofia, who are the developers of AC Rogue, is that they understood that they could fit their protagonist time frame into the time frame of Assassin's Creed Unity and chose to make the games interconnected so that the AC universe feels more connected. And this is something that is very important if you're gonna forego having multiple protagonists. Not only does AC Rogue show this, but they also implement Haytham and Adewale and other characters that we see in AC4 and AC3. AC Rogue does a beautiful job of giving us as close to a sequel as we can get in Assassin's Creed. AC Origins and AC Odyssey have nothing to do with each other, and the one final credit scene in AC Odyssey that tries to join everything together just falls flat on its face because it makes no sense. Again, Valhalla tries its best by joining a few little references from other Assassin's Creed, but it doesn't really do anything outside of that. When we see repeating characters, when we see familiar faces throughout Assassin's Creed, it kind of makes you feel rewarded as a fan for having invested so much time, money, and energy into this franchise. It also makes the stories much more believable. It makes the universe feel much more breathed in and lived in because you are not having bubbles of people that have never met each other exist in this world. Ezio was such an easy character to invest yourself into because you saw him from game to game, seeing the same people, interacting with the same people, and living in the same world. The recreation of Renaissance Italy and Istanbul throughout the three games is flawless because you have time to see things again and realize realize that there's some sort of narrative cohesion between all of these things. It's the reason why, even though Altair never got a sequel, the fact that we see him so often in Assassin's Creed Revelations allows us to invest more time into him. I think that it was a huge missed opportunity to not give Bayek a sequel, and I think most Assassin's Creed fans agree with this. But it was even worse when you see that taking huge historical jumps and not interconnecting the stories at least somewhat is, in my opinion, a very big mistake. AC Odyssey, Origins, and Valhalla are 3 games that make no real effort to interconnect the stories outside of the modern day, and the modern day is a travesty in its own right. So I wanted to kind of give some praise to Rogue for seeing an opportunity to make this world feel more interconnected, seeing an opportunity to make the Kenway saga feel somewhat more cohesive, and taking the opportunity to give players more of the characters that they love. They didn't have to give us Hatham. They didn't have to give us the scene in Paris where you kill Arno's father. None of that was necessary when they were drafting this game, but they chose to because they wanted Rogue to feel like a rewarding game to play, to feel like AC fans who have invested so much into this franchise are going to be happy with this installment, that it's going to add to the mythos, to the lore, to the history of the Assassin's Creed. And it's something that I'm very grateful for that Ubisoft Sofia did, that I think that every studio should take notes from. I think Mirage kind of tried to do it as well, and I think that other games have tried to do it as well. But the Kenway saga is as good as it is, in my opinion, because AC4 and AC Rogue all flow so well from each other that I think it makes it such a believable story, and it's something that I think AC Rogue did really, really well. So I just wanted to shout it out in this video because a lot of people criticize AC Rogue, and I'm one of them as well, but I really believe that there's something to be said about interconnectivity, about a living, breathing world, about the idea that if you're going to make a franchise that spans multiple games, you want to make it feel cohesive, and Ubisoft on many fronts has failed to do that. And I hope that one day we can get back to the idea of characters coming in and out of the games if the time period allows. The only exception to this, in my opinion, would be Cassandra. I don't think that the decision they made to make Cassandra immortal through the Staff of Hermes was a good idea, and I would not want any of the games to have Cassandra show up and be part of the story. I just think that's a bad idea, but I know a lot of people disagree, so, we'll see what happens. If you've enjoyed this video, thank you so much for watching up until the end, and if you're interested in watching a video where I analyze the psychology of Altair, who's my favorite character in the entire series, you can watch this video now.